Hey, good evening. My name's Don Herring. I'm the Director of Education and Programs for PSIA-AASI Eastern Division, and welcome to another Wednesday webinar. Tonight we have a presentation from Mike, Ma, Lindsey Harris, and Norm Staunton, and also I think you'll get a guest voice appearance from Augie Young at some point during this. And we are fortunate enough tonight to also have Jessica Kenworthy, who has jumped on to do some signing for us. So that'll help out quite a bit. I think that's really cool. So basically, a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, Mike, Lindsey, and Norm participated with other candidates in a multidiscipline tryout for the Eastern Adaptive Development Team. And they kind of bonded together to work on as a team and build on each other's skills during this kind of unusual tryout. And they were tasked to, by their coaches or by the people leading the tryout, to work as one team. So anyway, they were successful. They're going to share some of their insights about the process and the use of the people skills and teaching skills, no matter what your equipment you're riding on or who your students are, what they're riding on. I guess, with that, I'm going to turn it over to them just real quickly. If you have questions, you can type them in the questions box that you find right above the little chat set area on your panel. And from our end, our audio and cameras are working well. So if you're having any problems with getting yours to work, you'll have to just check your settings. So with no further ado, let me turn it over to Norm, Lindsey, Mike, Jessica, and the voice of Augie Young. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Don. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for hopping on with us and joining in. My name is Norm Staunton. I am the Operations Director at Vermont Adaptive Ski and Sport. We threw this panel together with the idea of just having an opportunity to kind of answer questions and to share some of our insights, but really to keep it kind of informal and to give everybody an opportunity to bring questions to us and to let us sort of try and answer them with the perspective of the traditional disciplines and the adaptive world and how those two things kind of relate to each other. Before we sort of turn over to questions and get going with some of the content, let me introduce Lindsey Harris and Mike Ma and give them a chance to kind of introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Lindsey Harris. I am a ski instructor with Vermont Adaptive and Killington Resort. I've been teaching for about 15 years, and I live up in Vermont.
Cool. Yeah, I'm Mike Ma. I'm at Adaptive Sports in Mount Snow, as well as still an active lineup instructor and the regular able-bodied school as well at Mount Snow. And I'm here in New York, holed up in the suburbs.
So I think one of the things that we want to make sure that everybody's aware of is that all three of us come with a background in both adaptive and working lineup, working privates, working in sort of traditional ski schools as instructors, as managers, and so we really kind of share that perspective of how does adaptive influence what can happen in group lessons and in private lessons, and vice versa. How does what we learn managing groups and teaching the technical skills influence what we do in the adaptive world when we're working one-on-one with somebody and trying to adapt what they do? I think where we can sort of start is if we turn it to, if we grab Angelo and have Angelo, who's in the background running tech for us, have him turn on Augie Young. Augie was one of the selectors. He's the dev team coach for the adaptive team. And maybe he can spend a few minutes talking about why they decided to do a one team and what that was all about when they did it. Augie, you with us?
I believe so. Can everybody hear me there?
Yeah, you're good.
Yep.
Great. Over the previous tryouts and years that we'd done individual tryouts between our what we'd classify alpine staff and our snowboard staff. As the years have been trending on, we started to really see an intermingling between our current staff that we had at educational events, trainings, and what was requested by different ski schools for training on the road for in-house events. So we took the approach that it was about time to finally put them all in there and see how they interacted together. Because at the end of the day, it's really teaching that sport to the individual and how you connect with the individual. And that was huge. And we've always been a proponent of that within the adaptive discipline. Regardless whether you're sitting down, standing up, sliding on a board, or two skis, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we're trying to make that connection deep with the individual who's come to you for a lesson or education. So the whole process of our tryout, spent some time with Holly Anderson and Rob Bevere trying to formulate what would be the best way to do this. And it was just to intermingle them, and we looked at tasks, events, and teaching seminars that would allow them to get out there, try things, be creative, and see the spontaneity that would happen, the same thing that would happen with a lesson that you got as an individual. So that was kind of our approach for these group. And as you can see, the three that you've got on the screen were the ones that we chose and selected because it was just inherent and natural to them as an educator, as a course conductor, to lead the group, take over, and give some of that energy and passion that they share and be infectious with the rest of the group. And hopefully it'll lead on here with the rest of the seminar.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Augie. So, hey, just a reminder to everybody that's on with us, please feel free to use that question box. If you've got questions about the adaptive world, about exam processes, about how to deal with students that you've had in lessons, any kind of questions that sort of might take a multidisciplinary approach, shoot them our way. Like we really want you all to drive what we're talking about tonight. We've got a little bit of content prepared and we're ready to sort of talk about what we want to talk about, but we'd much rather hear from you all and sort of be answering those kinds of questions. One of the things that we did to prepare to talk tonight and to be on with everybody is to put together some takeaways that we wanted to kind of talk about. We put together some takeaways for folks that work as sort of traditional discipline and lineup and private instructors, and some for folks that work in the adaptive world, because there's some folks that only operate in one or the other of those. And so maybe we'll spend a few minutes sharing some of those, and that might start generating some questions, and we'll take it from there. You know, one of the things that we spend a lot of time talking about on chairlifts and in clinics and whenever we're out sort of talking about what it is to do adaptive is the fact that everybody already does adaptive. Good teaching is good adaptive, right? We're responding to the needs and the abilities and the impairments and the functional things that our students present us with. And so one of the takeaways that we want to make sure everybody has is that this isn't a big, scary new thing. You're already doing it. Most folks already have these skills. We just apply them in a little bit of a different way, and we're maybe a little bit more conscious about the way that we do it. But everybody out there teaching snow sports is already doing adaptive work, and you've got some of those foundational skills already.
Yeah, you know, Norm, if we can, if I could jump in, because this is where I came in from, right? I came in from the able-bodied side, and you know, my path in adaptive has been fast and awesome. So you know, for me, there's a lot in there that I think a lot of people like, oh, I can't do that. It's different, right? And the way I phrase it, what Norm said, is like every lesson is adaptive. If you've played a game, you've done adaptive. If you work with someone who has any special needs, you've done adaptive. Chances are, statistically, if you teach children, I guarantee you've probably at least had a number of children on the ASD spectrum to start with. You've done adaptive. Every lesson is adaptive. The extent changes to some degree. That's thing one. Thing two that I go to is where the equipment hits the snow. We are all the same. Edge, flat edge is where Doesn't matter if you have two leg, one board, two skis, 4-track, mono, bi. Like, if you have the ability to watch the interaction between the equipment and the snow and start conjecturing about what in the body or something is doing that, then you can teach adaptive. Now, we have a somewhat more expansive view of what body means. It may mean an outrigger. It may mean an extra piece of equipment. But that is effectively all you need to teach adaptive. Because for me, I was always intimidated by the equipment. Like, I was always scared, like, ooh. And you know what? Like, look, I'm, Augie's headed to national tryouts. I'm headed to national tryouts. I'm still learning and working through it. And that's okay. It's a work in progress. In fact, Norm busted me during staff training when I was trying to suit a bi-ski. He's like, you don't work with equipment much, do you? Blah, blah, blah. And that's fine. Not only is it fine, we are all, everyone in every adaptive program has encountered something that they've seen before. I strapped a ventilator to someone's shins. I looked at my director, I taped it up, and I said, does this look okay to you? She's like, sure. Like, and so, like, don't be intimidated by the equipment. And the last thing I'll say, and Lindsay, I would love for you, because you spend time on both sides of the lineup as well. The more time I spend in adaptive, for those that are on the able-bodied side, particularly those who have like high certs and looking for what to do next, like, we need you. Like, the future is adaptive. If you look at again, the growth of people who are coming, that have individual education programs, the number of kids who are diagnosed with autism and ADHD. My son was just diagnosed this year with that. If you look at the number of veterans who are coming back, not quite the way they left, like, that is increasing. So if you wanted to make, and I spend my day job looking at business cases, if you wanted to find where there's growth in the industry, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, it's in our part of the world. So we need people to cross over. And one team doesn't mean ski and ride. One team means ski, ride, adaptive, able-bodied, and everything in between. So that's my little commercial for those who are thinking about coming from the able-bodied side onto the adaptive world. Please do. Linz, I'm curious about your perspective on it, since you do double time as well.
Yeah, I think there definitely is some hesitation to kind of take that step into adaptive, but if you can find a local adaptive program, they're certainly going to be very welcoming to someone who is already a seasoned instructor and already understands skiing and riding biomechanics and everything that goes into it. And I think just having that base of knowledge, like Norm and Mike were saying, anytime you're doing an able-bodied lesson, I've had many lessons where someone may even be an advanced skier, but one leg is moving better than the other leg. Well, just trying to brainstorm and figure out why that one leg is moving better than the other leg. That's exactly the same thing we do in adaptive. It just may be to a bigger extent, or we may have to add some equipment. So
if I could build on that too, for those, and we'll talk about the adaptive role. Most of the adaptive role are volunteers. What those that come from a paid mountain school have is reps. Like, you guys spend, how many beginner progressions have you guys taught? Right? Hundreds, maybe even for some thousands of, keep your knees above your toes, your bag of tricks, like moving it, like, you've seen it all. Many or a large majority of the volunteers that are currently teaching adaptive lessons, the program requirements as volunteers, one, they're not paid. Two, they tend not to have access to as much training as you do on the mountain school side. And three, they don't see the number of reps. Like, you're with an athlete half day or all day, some is a whole weekend. MLK weekend, we'll pitch and catch 20 in a group lesson. So you get to see 20 movement patterns and 20 prescriptions in an hour and a half lesson. And that type of condensed knowledge is something that the volunteer adaptive side could really benefit from those core movement mechanics, fundamentals, things that you guys know, beginner progressions, changes beginner off the top of your head. That's really been a huge service, at least in my journey into the adaptive world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So do you want to kick off the other side?
Yeah.
Before?
Yep.
So I don't know if one of you want to take this one too, because the other half is where we have people who are from the adaptive side who are, I think, scared. Ooh, we don't do the other. We won't learn about AASI or PSA on the snowboarding able body side. I'm curious, Norm, what you have to say to some of this.
It's some of this we've already talked about, right? Mike and Lindsey both kind of mentioned this about some of the benefits of spending time and developing your skills working in able-bodied lessons, group lessons, private lessons. And so one of our takeaways, and I guess several of our takeaways for folks that work sort of more strictly in the adaptive world is to spend some time working with our colleagues in mountain schools. We find that having those base technical skills, those base technical knowledge pieces are critical for being able to make good adaptations and make good decisions for how to instruct our student and to get creative with how to make changes to their mechanics and to their kinesthetics. As Mike mentioned, the other piece is that there's oftentimes a real sort of availability of additional training. And so making friends with folks that work at mountain schools, making friends with the directors and the tech directors, spending as much time cross-training and inviting those folks back to your own training makes for better instructors sort of across the board. And that's, we have certainly found that at Vermont Adaptive's resorts, but I think that's sort of a universal rule for folks as well, to just spend as much time as you can working with folks that have different skill sets and try to pull in on those skill sets.
And I just wanted to add something to that. If you're an adaptive instructor and you may not already have that relationship with a regular ski school, if you go and talk to them and say, I'm willing to help, give some training about what to do when someone shows up in your group lesson who maybe should have been an adaptive lesson, and start that relationship that way, and then that way you can provide some help for them, and then in return you can get some training from them, hopefully.
Yeah, I think a couple things to add to this down this list is, and this is said in observation of working with several adaptive staffs, is that just like we tell able-bodied instructors not to be enamored, intimidated by the equipment, on the flip side, adaptive, to my adaptive peeps, don't use the equipment as a crutch. And there's many people like, oh, I only tether, or no, I only do I only do four track, I only do this, I only work with VIDD, I only what we really do is we teach people to slide on snow, and it's my belief the best equipment is as little as possible, because the goal in adaptive is independence. And I'll have my level 1 groups, like, I want you to give me a thesis about, like, of all the equipment, line it up from most independent to least independent, and tell me how you go through that and work, because the goal is freedom. They're no different than anyone else sliding on a Saturday or Sunday or whatever day you go out. Like, they just want to feel free. So the more you can steer that be the case, a good thing to think through. And the other thing is, we don't give people rides. We still teach. Like, this idea of understanding the same thing, there's a reason why this is the same. Edge, flat, edge is true for those coming from able body, and then those in adaptive. Edge, flat, edge is what we teach. Even if you're dealing with someone who, you're tethering in a bi-ski, any lesson where I'm able to have any sort of connection with my athlete, they steer. Like, they're going to be a participant in, as much as their ability allows them to move the equipment from edge, flat, and edge, right? And your ability to coach, like, oh, more neck, little less neck. Like, yes, that's good. Like, that's coaching. That doesn't escape us on the adaptive side as well.
Yeah, I think to add to that, right, that one of the things that I've seen a lot of folks sort of fall into the trap of is in along the lines of the equipment as a crutch, but also sort of that idea of the ride versus independence is sort of teaching things that we end up having to unteach later on, right? Rather than potentially putting in some extra time on the flats, on the bunny hill. You know, our goal, in the same way that it is in a snowboard lesson or an alpine lesson, it's those stepping stones, and we don't ever want to move backwards and teach folks things that are going to get them going in the wrong direction, literally or figuratively, right? We want to put in the time and think about how they're going to develop from what we're teaching them forward towards that level of sort of greatest potential independence. You know, and you know, to Mike's point earlier, the future is adaptive. We need folks that are interested and willing and sort of get excited about teaching in the adaptive realm, whether it's crossover folks from mountain schools or whether it's folks that are new to teaching at all. They're, as Mike said, you know, that this is where the growth is right now. And we need folks that are interested in it and who have an interest in coming and applying some of these things and being a part of that development and seeing where that kind of goes and building on those technical skills and those people skills and those teaching skills. Yeah. Cool.
Norm, is this the part of the show where we ask for questions and see what's out there?
I think we are at that part of the show. Right now, I'm not seeing any questions. So I know Angelo's in the background. Angelo, if you're seeing questions that we're not, let us know. But I can also, we can throw a few sort of softball questions to our panelists here and see where that gets us. So to Mike and to you, Lindsey, can you talk a little bit about why you got into adaptive in the first place? What was it that sort of attracted you, and why'd you make the crossover from where you were?
So I actually started teaching both at the same time. When I was in college, I wanted to start teaching, and my mom introduced me to adaptive, and I just kind of fell in love with it. And so I found that in adaptive, I really appreciated the team approach when you have multiple instructors working together to problem solve and come up with new ideas. And that was something that, especially as a new instructor, I really benefited a lot from, all that brainstorming and working together. So I felt like that really kind of started my career in a way that I was always really wanting to learn more and get as much training as possible. I also just really love studying biomechanics, and that's why I became a physical therapist. And it's just an area that I'm really drawn to.
Yeah, I'll keep it real and give some, like, here's the honest answer. Like, I got bored of teaching regular able-bodied snowboarding, and I had a midlife crisis. Like, that is the honest to God good truth of why I'm here. Also, Holly Anderson dragged me kicking and screaming. But like, this is the honest truth. Like, there are, I came to a point in my snow sports career, as much as that is weird to say those words. Like, look, what am I doing? Right? Like, how many more times can I tell someone to keep their knees above their toes, or like, how to rip an amazing carb? Like, I fell into a pattern of routines and grinds, and I wanted to feel reward. I wanted to fall in love with teaching again. And by God, like, if you do adaptive, not only is it emotionally rewarding beyond all, like, look, it is awesome to get a high five and a tip and hang out with your clients after a great day of riding. It is a whole nother thing to be let into people's lives because you gave them their freedom, and it's completely different. The other thing, as a teacher, on the technical side, like there are times like I am stumped. Like I it takes a lot to stump me on the able-bodied side from a teaching perspective of why an athlete's not getting it. But there are times I'm just sitting there and I'll use, and this goes back to the one team perspective, where we work together, particularly on, let's call it neutral equipment like a mono or a bi-ski. It's like, like these are not our home territory, so to speak. Um, ah, he keeps railing his left turn. I can't figure out why. It doesn't, like, the seat's right, the bucket. I mean, like, it really challenges you. Or when you have like you can have an athlete that has a vision impairment, PTSD, is double below the knee, like, and they got all sorts of stuff going on, and like, and then you're also trying to like do the normal teaching thing. If you want to be stimulated and want to be like your whole neural network is firing, I'm like, okay, how do I do this? How do I keep it straight? Okay, there. Okay, that was good. Oh my god, he almost got killed. Okay, like what do I think about public safety? How am I using my assist to like protect uphill traffic? Like, if you want to be fully engaged as a teacher intellectually, there is nothing harder than, it. Teaching adaptive is like four-dimensional chess. It is like I leave and I am mentally exhausted after every lesson. I was like, I have no idea how I did that. And some of them I still don't know of how you break through. And to be honest, some athletes I've worked with for months, and years even, and I'm still figuring them out because their body's changing and their situation's changing. So for me, it's emotionally rewarding, but as an instructor, it's also like it's very intellectually rewarding as well.
Cool. Thank you both for that. I'm hearing from Angelo that we have some questions that have come in. So, Ange, if you're on there, can you maybe throw us one of the questions?
Yeah, I have kind of put them together according to theme. First off, can you guys talk about building trust and or managing fear?
Sure.
Who wants this one?
Well, we've blabbed the last one. Do you want to take a first swag at this?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, building trust, managing fear, like these are critical parts of teaching any lesson. It has nothing to do with adaptive. One of the concepts that I think about a lot is that we're, as much as in the able-bodied world, in the adaptive world, we are frequently serving two very different clients, and so we are working to build trust not only with the student that we're out on the hill with, but with their parents, with their caregivers, with their family and their friends who are seeing us bring in new equipment and doing all these sorts of things that in some cognitive scheme maybe weren't possible even a few minutes ago. And so we have to sort of manage both of those relationships for sure. A little bit of fear is a good thing, right? It helps folks to step outside of their comfort zone and to manage the environment that they're in and to get into that focused kind of flow state. But too much is a bad thing, right? And so that's a big part of anybody's job out on the hill, is to keep people in that sort of sweet spot of, I'm functionally a little anxious, but I'm not ramped up so high that I can't focus on doing anything else. The rest about building trust is one of the things that as adaptive instructors we frequently have the luxury of, is that we get to think about development of athletes over the course of seasons and years and decades, not just the 2 hours that I've got somebody in front of me with a school group. And so in that sense, we really have some opportunity to build trust, as Mike put it, right? To become a part of their lives. And that really allows us to open up some doors. There are athletes that I have worked with, I've been fortunate enough to work with for literally their entire lives since they were kids, and they're now young adults. And the sort of bond and the trust that we have in each other, of knowing what they're capable of them trusting me to make good decisions and for us to make decisions together, man, we ski some crazy stuff and we go do crazy things, and it's because we have that relationship already. It's not stuff that we would just go do on day one or minute 20 of a group lesson. Taking the time to really to progress that and earn people's trust is a huge part of it. Guys?
Yeah, I think especially I've noticed this a lot with my visually impaired skiers. Someone shows up, you meet them, and within 20, 30 minutes, you're heading out on the hill. And as a guide, you have to really make sure that you're portraying a lot of confidence, because they're hearing everything, all the intonations in your voice. And so there are little cues there that will really let them know whether or not they can trust you. Because you literally have their lives in your hands, and you need to make sure that they trust you. And that's something that's always amazed me whenever I ski with someone who's visually impaired, that they are capable of trusting someone so quickly. And I found myself, often, when, Mike was saying about it being intellectually stimulating, making sure, like, guiding someone down the hill, making sure that you're not putting your skier in danger, the general public in danger, yourself in danger, all while remaining verbally calm and and not alarming your skier. There are a lot of things to be aware of there.
Yeah, what I love about this one team concept around this question is, like, you have all the answers yourself. I applied the same things you do in an able-bodied lesson, right? So let's talk about trust and fear from a CAP model perspective. And it means different things. It's just CAP model is a good way to get to physical and emotional empathy, but like you have to put that on steroids and adaptive, right? So when I work with a veteran, like, trust means, like, I am never leaving that person six, like, which means they're behind. Like, and I'll tell them, like, I have you. I will, like, literally, I tell them, like, I have you. You'll hear me all the time. I'm never going to leave you. And I'll just tell them that, right? And that means different, and that's just all that is an application of the CAT model. I had someone that threw a tantrum, like, literally, on the AC spec. I just laid next to them on the floor on the snow. They literally threw their snowboard off. I did this in tryouts. Right? They literally threw their snowboard off and ran in the woods. That's literally what happened. So I just threw my snowboard off and I ran in the woods, and we just lied there. It's the same stuff you do to build trust. So that's like, again, it's like core stuff. Other things I think through, like terrain selection. It's a very easy way to like take a core teaching principle and again, I amp everything down a level because I want trust and I want that to feel good. Again, like Norm said, not just for the athlete, but also for the athlete's parents or caregivers as well, because that can be a problem. I think other things like, these are just like core principles you bring in to teaching, right? Simple, static, simple, complex, right? I do more in static, like, as a way to bring the level down. But these are all, and so I over allocate that in an able-bodied lesson as a way to build trust. So I guess my point is too, it's like there are like broad empathy things that Norm and Lindsay brought up too. But even if you feel like you've never done it before, my answer is, like, you probably have the tools and vernacular and like all the structure. You just have to think about how to rejigger it or amplify certain parts or shrink other parts to meet it. But it's all the same stuff, and that's why we talk a lot about this in the one team aspect. It's so there you go. There's CAT model, terrain selection, and static, simple, complex. These are like four teaching principles. I'll run an able-bodied new hire or training, just applied in completely different ways.
Yeah. Yeah, it occurred to me while we were talking that at least my answer didn't really get to the core of the question, right? I answered why it's important, not how do you actually do it, right? How do you actually earn somebody's trust? And Mike and Lindsey's answers got me thinking quite a bit, right? Here we are, one team working together, thinking about the way other people think about things. Two real sort of successful strategies that I have used. One is build on success, right? Make sure that you're building off of a success that somebody has had and using that as sort of the launching pad to get to the next thing. The other that I use really frequently, and this sort of harkens back to the PDAS model from the children's specialists and from working with kids, is just being really clear. Like, no, right now we're working on a skill, and no, right now it is about skiing, it is about riding, it's about terrain. Has nothing to do with how we get down it. Let's just get down it. Let's just have some fun and put the skills to work, and really being sort of conscious about when is it about working on a drill or a skill or an activity, and when is it just like, nope, we're out free riding. Let's just do this. And if it's one turn stop, that's okay. That's a success, and we can build on that. Anybody got any more on that one before we turn it to Ange and see what else folks have asked us for?
Good.
All right, Angela, what else you got?
Like a billion really good questions. Seems like a lot of people attended tonight, maybe with the intention of becoming involved as an adaptive instructor. So a general question is about the exam process, but maybe specifically you could address this one. A fellow would like to know if you think there will be a level 2 exam prep for adaptive this season, Eastern Division, I assume.
Who wants that one? Yeah, nobody wants to touch that one.
Maybe Don can answer that one.
I mean, here's the thing. Like, if you want to have it happen, this staff and beyond will help you prep for it. The best way I would say is to organize. Like, we and Don would be like, we, particularly on the snowboard side, we have a lot. Like, I can tell you firsthand, the snowboard side, like, we have begged, borrowed, steal, like mashed together, like held Facebook groups, like put up smoke signals, Morse code, like to get an event to go off. So if you want it, like, absolutely, my encouragement is, and this is, it's a little bit unfair because it puts more of a burden than, let's say, on like an Alpine level 2 prep that'll have like 35 people, or snowboard. Like, we just need the numbers to go. And I can speak for me, and I know this group, like we will couch surf, we will travel, like, and I speak for probably almost all the ed staff to make this go off, if it can. But probably Don better to answer some of that. But I can just tell you about the staff's perspective on it.
So,
Yeah. There it is. Good.
am I on? So yeah, just from the office standpoint, it doesn't take that many to make an adaptive event run. We run them with smaller numbers than we do run with Alpine or snowboard. So, but it does take 4 or 5, and sometimes that's the problem. And sometimes so if we get something going, and we'll try and get it on Facebook if there are a couple people interested, and if we can get it up to 4 or 5 people, we will probably run. So that's the best answer I have for that.
Yeah. And for those who have friends in other divisions, like there is a reason why we started the Facebook group in the East and we just made it national. It's because there's just not enough of us, so we need strength in numbers. And I've been lucky to be involved in a couple of national things. We're actually rewriting the snowboard adaptive manual. By the way, I will put a link in here for people who are interested in that. Hit me up about that. But invite people. If you have a friend in Central, great. Like, see if you can invite them. We had some people from our side who were thinking about doing an adaptive level 3 snowboard at Mammoth before the coronavirus hit. Like, great. Like, I think, with my East hat on, obviously it'd be better. We'd love for them to come here. We run the most adaptive events of any division, and we probably have the lowest number of hit rates that it goes off. So It's, in my short time on ed staff with, I've been very thankful for the support that the office gives us to run these events. They just have to get filled.
Yeah, I would add only one other piece to that, and that is that, as Mike was saying, this staff, not only the folks that are on the call tonight, but the entire adaptive ed staff, we love doing these events. We like seeing them go off. So be in touch. Like, feel free to reach out to me, to anybody on the staff, and ask about other events and other opportunities. Part of the reason I mentioned that is that a very large number of the events that we end up working end up being in-house, sort of quote unquote private events, where an adaptive school, an adaptive program will hire us to come in and run an exam or run a prep event. And there's very oftentimes opportunities that aren't sort of public where we can sort of get folks into events. So feel free, like we do our best to communicate about those opportunities between us and sort of where we can. But if you've got a particular need for a particular exam or a particular kind of development event, let us know and we'll do what we can to find one for you and help you get into it.
And another thing too is, don't forget, if you're looking for an adaptive prep event, especially a prep event, don't be afraid to look into any alpine or snowboarding preps that you can do as well, because you're going to have a great focus on your own personal skiing and riding, and you're also going to have some great teaching material that you can incorporate into your adaptive lessons. So that's a great option.
Cool. Great question. Angela, was there enough questions that we should talk about the exam process briefly?
Yeah, and specifically, one just came in asking what's the best way to go about training for a level 1 adaptive exam?
Cool. I have one word answer, maybe 2-word answer to that question, and that's teach more. Get out and practice. Do what it is that we do. That is one of the most important parts on that piece. What do you guys find?
I think just, try to reach out if you have any level 2 or 3 instructors. Reach out to them, even if, there aren't clinics going on. Just, don't hesitate to, just pull them aside and be like, hey, can I go out with you this afternoon and just run through some of these tasks so that you are familiar with what the specific tasks are going to be. And certainly as far as teaching goes, if you're going out on a lesson and you're, if you have the opportunity to have someone come with you and just either observe you or just give some pointers or different ideas that you can then incorporate into your teaching repertoire. Just the more experience, the better.
Yeah, without knowing who the question asker is, right? Like if it's level, so I think we can answer this 2 ways, and maybe people want to jump back in. Like, if you're an adaptive volunteer, how do you get to the level 1 standard? Chances are you've spent a lot of. What I would say for those people is, generally speaking, one, make sure that you have a broad base of different types of profiles, right? So if you've done with anatomical stuff, make sure you have at least some working understanding of other disciplines. Even though there's still specialty, like having a broad understanding of like what it's like to work with somebody visually impaired, developmental, what it's like to work with someone who is in a different, a monobi, at least understanding it conceptually, even if you've only done one thing. That's thing 1. Thing 2 is be able to describe what is happening with the edge and snow and the body and the equipment and the relation. And you don't have to use fancy words, but at least understand the connection and what you would do in a morning or afternoon as an instructor. If you can put those 2 things together and put some mileage in as an adaptive instructor, leveling up, I think that's good. For those who are coming from, let's say, an AASI or PSI level 1, you have some of these core fundamentals. Teach. spend some time into a program, understand what it's like to get a file, an intake file, and actually look, and then have to work with one person all day and have to like think about extending your knowledge into a unique athlete profile you don't normally encounter. Be able to point to different things in your teaching experience that may have you can amplify towards, let's say, someone on the autism spectrum, or how you would think about. You probably have enough mileage on the teaching side where you can take something intellectual you may have never done before, but know how you put that into a progression. But so I guess adaptive level 1, I would say, get the fundamentals on movement analysis and teaching is generally, and new profiles. And then level 2, you know, for those coming from the able-bodied level 1 or higher, start thinking about what I call like strategic empathy, and understanding, and some of it's practical empathy, like go do it. But then also start applying your broad basic knowledge in the areas that you may not have time to actually like volunteer 300 hours into an adaptive program. You probably have enough knowledge to be able to start thinking through some of those.
Angela, what else you got for us?
Mike mentioned coronavirus a bit ago, and we've gotten a few questions on how, if you have any information on how adaptive programs are prepping for the upcoming season, because there might be additional concerns with adaptive students.
That seems right in Norm's wheelhouse.
Yeah, I'm sitting here shaking my head because that's.
I'm just a line instructor. That's what I let all the directors figure out.
No, it's there. There is. So whoever asked that question is spot on. That there are absolutely additional concerns for a pretty high percentage of the folks that we ski with, as far as being in risky groups or having immunocompromised systems or having had previous sort of respiratory issues or having been intubated or all of the other sort of risk factors. It's a little bit of a sort of broad, sort of bright new world. We're not totally sure what it's all going to look like. From a holding events standpoint, there's a lot of questions about how are we gonna do that, and the answer that I would give, at least as far as what Vermont Adaptive is doing and what we're prepping for, is like, if there's a way to do it, we're going to, right? We will do whatever we can to be safe. Some of the things that are being talked about, some of the things that people are thinking about how to manage are, indoor spaces, and how do we have folks in those indoor spaces? Another is lifts. Many of our lessons require pretty close contact on the lift, not just in the sense of being on a 4-pack or a 6-pack, but physically lifting people onto lifts and holding them in place and assisting them. How do we handle that? How is that safe? Can it be safe? How do we then sort of adjust? And obviously working in partnership with our host resorts is a big part of all of that process of what their regs are going to be, what their protocols are. And I'm sorry to say that one of the other things that we're talking about, not just Vermont Adaptive, but adaptive programs across the country, is are there folks that we are not able to serve anymore? And that is a potential reality that some of the EECs may have to change. EECs is the essential eligibility criteria, and they're essentially the rules around what does somebody have to be able to do and is reasonable to ask them to do in order to participate. And there may be cases in which being independent or having the ability to bring companions or assists with them may start to be sort of the operating norms for programs. It's going to vary from program to program, but those are some of the things that at least are being talked about. Guys, I know. Whatever else. Nothing? All right, Angelo, hit us with another one.
I'll just throw in that every week this is Don, and every week there are webinars going on. Ski Area Management Magazine and other places are running webinars where people in management from across the country and the globe are getting together to discuss these issues. So we're looking at every possibility and trying to come up with plans A through Z. And when we know more about what we can do, what the resorts will let us do, it'll be easier for us to give you a more definitive answer. But I just want everyone to know that we are working on it.
I mean, this is where Lindsay and I, as both spouses of doctors, like those who are on the front line of it, like I can only hear the front line is still working through that. So I'm waiting for them to figure that out before we talk about sliding on stuff with the people who are probably very highly at risk. So I hear her Zoom calls and they're still working through that, but.
It's also really important, right? Like for a lot of folks that work with adaptive programs, that ski or ride with adaptive programs, or do summer sports with adaptive programs, this may be their only way to get outside and to get exercise and to stay fit, all of which are ways that Mike's first line of defense has identified as sort of helping. So it's something that everybody's taking really seriously because it borders on being an essential thing for a lot of folks that we work with.
The only thing I can comment from an instructor's perspective as I look forward to this year is that if I were to be on lineup, I just know I would be ultra sensitive, regardless of the population I'm dealing with, about safety and fun. If you think about safety, fun, learning, connection, like I'll tell you my first lesson I'm going out, like I'm way over allocating on the safety and fun more than I normally do. That's just in the back of my mind as I take my first athlete out, whenever that may be.
Yep. So Angela, we're coming down to the wire here a little bit. You got a couple of other questions that we can try and sneak in?
I do. A lot of people are curious. It seems there's a lot of volunteerism in the adaptive world, which I don't think exists in the alpine or snowboard world. Can you talk about why so many of these programs are volunteer based?
All right, they're all looking at me again. I think some of it comes down to, quite frankly, to the economics of it, right? So there are essentially two kinds of adaptive ski programs on the East Coast. One is run through mountain schools, where they typically have paid instructors and folks are paying sort of lesson rates or private lesson rates. And the other is independent, nonprofit sort of partner programs, like Vermont Adaptive, like Mount Snow, right? Where we try to cut some of those costs, right? We're trying to provide access through our volunteers, through our equipment, through our spaces. And so I think the economics of those two models ended up dictating some of that. That on the one model where we're trying to decrease barriers, we're relying on volunteers because there just isn't enough left. And on the other side, you've got a system where folks are paying for access and able to get paid instructors and set times, and there's not that sort of like sense of not diminished resources, but sort of scarce resources potentially. And it's just two different models. It's two different ways of thinking about things, and each one has sort of pros and cons to it. But the question asker is absolutely right that at least on the East Coast, it's largely driven by volunteer folks.
Yeah, and for me, that's a plug why those coming from able-bodied mountain schools can have such a high impact, right? A little bit of what you do on the paid side, if you can actually not just train the athletes you work with in adaptive, but help train and impart your knowledge on the benefit of what is being subsidized the wrong word, but you're getting paid for, right? Like if you can bring that in, that has impact not just for you, but for every single, not just for the athletes, but every single volunteer to see like, Lindsay, like that's how she does it. Like that's pretty awesome. I need to put that into my game. So that's the economics are one other big reason why I think it's really important for those from mountain school to come over.
What else you got, Angelo? as we hit the rapid fire section.
Yeah, a couple of questions about how you all prepare. You have such a large swath of things that you can see during a day. As an instructor, how do you prepare yourself for what you may encounter that maybe you haven't yet?
So, there's, in the adaptive world, there's always going to be a lesson where it's something brand new that you've never experienced before. And so I think just being willing to be creative and, like I said before, brainstorming with other instructors and trying to figure out the best possible solution, and just using all the experiences that you've had in the past to try something. It may not work, and you try something else. And just being, honest with yourself and everybody that you're working with, including the client, and be like, hey, we're going to try this. If this doesn't work, we'll try something else. And I found in the past that just being honest and willing to try things, and it works out eventually.
What I'd like to add is two things. Like one, again, for those on the AAASI, you get for most programs, most of the times you'll get an intake file that will have like usually some background information. So you have some time to actually read about this, and then if they've done and been at that program several times before, you're able to see reports of what they did on snow those particular days, and in there you'll get everything from what their ability was, what they did. You also get caretakers notes as well about how they. So one, you have some time. I would say, like, if you get there a little early, and spend some time with the file, that can be a benefit. Sometimes you don't have that. The other thing, and again, just to keep it real, like I use this, like I use my phone. Like there's stuff that like I'm like, I've never seen that word my entire life. I do not know what that is, and I will just Google it. And that is not cheating. That is being smart and ensuring your athlete has a safe, fun time. So, and then those are the two things I would add in addition to like asking around. Read and cheat. Like it's not cheating. Like there's a reason why all this is here for your use. Just keeping it real.
Yeah, I mean, I would add to that the other place where we can cheat and a great source of information is from our athletes, yeah. Right? They are the experts on their disability. They know a lot more about it than we ever will, and so using them and sort of working in partnership with them, where we can come in with the ideas and the teaching, and they come in with the knowledge of their sort of impairments and what is sort of functionally possible for them. That's really where the sort of exciting stuff happens is sort of in that collaborative process. Much like the one team that we're talking about tonight. Yep. So we're coming down kind of the wire here. I wanna thank everybody for participating and being with us tonight. Certainly let me throw a plug to sort of two ways to continue the conversation. One is attend events, right? Whatever, as Don was saying, whatever we can do, whatever's happening this year, please come out, be a part of those events, regardless of what your background is. We'd love to have you. And the other is through the various social media platforms that are out there. Mike's heavily involved in the PSIA-AASI adaptive page. We've got the Eastern page. Feel free to keep these conversations going on those pages, and we'll all do what we can to answer questions and sort of be a part of that conversation if stuff didn't get answered tonight. As we wrap up, I'd love to just sort of throw it back to Mike and Lindsey for sort of like final thought, takeaway, like what's the thing you want to make sure people remember?
So I would say that, throughout this, when we did our one team tryouts 2 years ago, I knew some about snowboarding. I can dabble in snowboarding, but the challenge of trying to relate my ski tasks and my ski progressions to snowboarding was awesome, and I loved it. And I still find myself occasionally thinking about how could I take this one task and make it into a snowboarding activity. And that's just something that kind of I hadn't really thought of much before, and it's a new challenge, and it's great.
Yeah, I had just two thoughts. So one was to build off what Norm said. Like, look, there's tons of resources out there online, in addition to social. Like, my thought is read, like, and read and be loud about it and give feedback about what like. So there's tons of e-learning resources on national. We have a set on Eastern. Other divisions have theirs as well. So please engage with those resources. There's a lot of wisdom in there. Um, Also know that, like all adaptive, it's a work in progress. Um, and then that's the plug on social. And I can only speak specifically about the adaptive snowboard end. We are in the process of rewriting that, and we need feedback on it. We are aware that there, I can tell you firsthand that those things are have been challenging, right, and sparse to find and study for and prep for not just an exam, but for a Sunday, right? So that's out there. So read and be vocal about it. And my last parting thought is, like, there's no such thing as adaptive snowboarding or adaptive skiing. Good skiing is good skiing is good skiing. Good riding is good riding is good riding. And those fundamentals don't change um, around any of this. And Lindsay, during staff training, we were doing a task, and she gave me some amazing feedback about a move I particularly sucked at. So like I'm a wholehearted believer in that, and those are the things that I encourage both sides, able-bodied and adaptive, to focus on.
Yeah, take a step out of your comfort zone, and you might find something new and exciting.
For sure. Well, Lindsay, Mike, thank you to both of you for joining in tonight.
No, thank you, Norm.
Thank you, Norm.
Thank you.
A special thank you to Jessica, who is here signing and translating for us and adding to our accessibility tonight. There will be more of these opportunities. Continue to follow the newsletters and the Facebook pages. There are going to be a ton of additional summer things that are planned through Albany and through the division. So please feel free, and we'd love to see you more. And if you'd love to hear from us or other folks from the adaptive staff, feel free to let folks know that too. With that, we'll say goodnight and thank you, and start thinking about snow.
And also, thanks to Angelo for working the backside of this as our engineer. Thank you guys. All of you are awesome. Thank you.